And we're live, brother. How you doing, man? You got me, Clint?
Back in here. Hopefully Jeremy pops up in here.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good. What's up, dude?
Hey, not much, man. Obviously, we've got to work some rust out. It looks like on our freaking StreamYard. It's been a while. You know, I can tell you that, hey, we appreciate the guys that have been really checking on us in the DMs and send us, little notes on Messenger, trying to figure out what's how we're doing, if we're doing okay. I can tell you that this was a week that's kind of been really in the works after the bye game. Jeremy went from and let me know if I'm wrong, but pretty much after Saturday's game, did a military operation for a while, and I've done some travel for work, trying to do all the stuff that we probably needed to do during this bye week. But it's definitely good to be back.
No, dude, you're 100% correct. Like the moment that we left the Oklahoma State postgame show, I started packing a bag and been out in the woods for a couple of weeks. Came back just this week and then going back on Monday. Really appreciate, like you said, all the well wishers that were checking on us. We're good to go, man. Texas Football Talk is alive and well and ready to talk Baylor football.
Yeah, man. I think
Texas football.
Yeah, I think before we get to the Baylor game, we'll talk a little bit about that. But I think we need to. Me and you haven't really had an opportunity to talk adjustments on what we want to see after the bye week going into the last 5 games of the season, man. So we start on the offensive side of the ball, man. Offensive adjustments. Let's kind of go through those. What you want to see from the offense moving forward as we move through Baylor and then go into obviously Iowa State at Ames, and then the list goes on and on and on.
And so I'm going to go position by position because that's always how we do it. So the quarterback position, I need to see Casey have the same playbook in the second half, that he has in the first, 35 scripted plays. I need that thing to be wide open for him from quarter 1 to quarter 4. Alignments, different personnel groupings to allow him the full game into the playbook to set the defense up for what should be. And like we continue to score points. Like scoring points is not a thing for us. We just need to play complimentary football for 4 quarters.
Yeah, I think when you go back to talk about the scripted plays, I don't know how many scripted plays it is. We always throw out the number of 35 scripted plays.
It was like 30, 35.
35, because I think those 35 plays was what was getting you through really that first half. And so if you're looking at the number of plays that we obviously run through a game, we're probably looking somewhere between 60 and 70. So we kind of cut that in half. But I think Steve Sarkisian kind of brought that up in a press conference this week where he talks about he didn't feel like he could call some of the plays in the second half. And I think he toned it down a little bit. So he talked about that a little bit, in trusting his guys to be able to play all the way through those 4 quarters and be able to call those plays that were necessary. That they did in the first half that we've seen over and over and over again.
And why change? Why change what's working? Like why get conservative? Like that's the issue we've talked about, years after years after years. Like you jumped up on a football team by 18 points in the first half, but yet you felt the need to, look at the clock and wind the clock down. It's really, for me, not a thing. Like you have to continue to, like you said, trust your players. You trust them in the first half to run plays that they consistently did well. Like, why don't you transition that into the second half? So, yeah, I feel like he understands that and is probably going to look to do that more, over these next couple of games in conference play. And this team's going to probably, hopefully, take off. I have no idea. It's so inconsistent from quarter to quarter, from half to half. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. You really don't.
And I think that's the biggest thing is you don't see consistency. It's you like you said, you jump out big on teams that, and again, we go back to if you going back to really the Oklahoma game, if you thought you were going to be up about 3 touchdowns at the end of the half, it's probably something you didn't necessarily see. Texas Oklahoma is really a finicky game, and I think momentum is what carries those teams through those games. But I think consistency, 1, 2, fall motion, man. I don't think you're seeing as much motion in the second half as you've seen in the first half. And I don't understand the idea behind that, because to me, if you have an opportunity to, create motion like you did in the first half. It gives, I think, Casey Thompson an idea of what the defense is running. Plus, if you're running those plays, if you're running the same, let's pick those, 35 again, those 35 plays, even if teams are adjusting to them, I think you can still run those even if they're done from different sets. That makes sense? Going from a 2-back set to maybe a 3-wide and running the same play, the outside zone, just from a different look, which is, obviously done this really well.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things that we've talked about, like you said, motion creates, is it man or is it zone? Number one. And then number two, you have to continue to do those things to continue to set up, the defense for other thoughts and make their defensive coordinator prepare for, multiple game plans. But my thought is that they're there. Like, he just has to trust that his first half game plan will carry through the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's talk a little bit about the defense side of the ball, man. I'll start here. Actually, let's go back to offense real quick because I want to talk about Keelan Robinson real quick. What do you see Keelan Robinson's role being over the next 5 games? Because it sounds like they're going to utilize him. How do you think you utilize, Keelan Robinson going through the end of the season?
Slots, jet sweeps, wide receiver screens. That's what he does, man. That's the dimension that he gives you, is that guy that you talked about who motions, who the linebacker or safety may have to follow if he's in the slot. And then if you pitch him on a quick pitch, ahead of the line of scrimmage and he takes off around the corner, they have to account for him. If you get him, like I said, with Jordan Whittington out, you have to rely on his skill set. You have to put him in as many different positions that you can in order to take advantage of whoever he may be going against.
So you think you just put 2 Robinsons on the field together and really just have one motion out to really the slot? Is that the way you see it, or just play him strictly from the slot and then bring it back to the backfield and utilize him like that?
To me, I want Steve Sarkisian to put the 5 best athletes, whether it be two running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 running back, 4 wide receivers, or whatever skill set or whatever alignment he thinks are his best weapons. He finds a way to get them on the football field and finds a way to use them at their full potential, like whatever it may be.
Yeah. Trying to get some of these comments up here. Trying to figure out how do we do that. There we go. Again, rusty. So Cody Phillips here, who sacrificed the touches for Keelan? I don't think it's so much sacrificing touches, because, if you go back and look at what Jordan Whittington did, I don't think they go into the game knowing exactly. I think they know that they want to get Bijan so many touches. I think they want to get to the ball to Xavier Worthy as much as you can, on the outside. But I think it's not so much sacrificing touches from an individual player. I think it's scheming these guys into a position where they have an opportunity to perform.
Yeah. So you want your most explosive players to get the ball as many freaking times as you can in a football game. And the only 2 dudes I wrote was B and X. So you understand when you walk into a game plan that you want to get Bijan Robinson the ball as many times as you can. You want to get Xavier Worthy the ball as many times as you can. But after that, like, who are the most explosive players? You got to walk down your depth chart and say, hey, I'm going to get the ball in Keelan's hand this many times. I'm going to get the ball in Roschon Johnson's hands this many times. I need to get the ball to Joshua Moore. And again, that's another guy who has productive seasons in this program, who's an upperclassman who hasn't performed at the level of Xavier Worthy or Jordan Whittington at this point. Like, we need to see more production from that position, in my point. But
I think the wide receiver, if you go back and look at wide receiver, it's been like that over the last couple of years, where you'll see a guy break out for, 100+ game, 8 catches, 100+ yards, and they go missing for multiple games after that. You don't see them. And I think that's happened to not just Joshua Moore, but also Xavier Worthy in some of these games. And I think, obviously if teams are going to think that, okay, hey, Xavier Worthy is probably the best, pass catcher on, on the Texas Longhorns depth chart, they're probably going to, play a safety over the top of him. That's when another wide receiver is going to have to be able to step up. But I think this is where that slot receiver is probably the most important position, because if I got a Keelan Robinson who probably runs a 4.3 40 and I have him in the slot, that's going to take that safety and make that safety play over the top of 𝗟𝗏 Robinson, because the only other thing you could do is put a linebacker over the top of him, and that's going to be a mismatch all day long. It's a mismatch with a safety as well with that speed. So I think it's really to how they scheme these guys open. I think it's going to happen. I can tell you this is a tough Baylor program. I've watched a lot of football this year, and I think they may, when you're talking about complementary football, they may be the best team I've seen as far as how the offense and the defense work together as a team. And I think that's why they've been as successful as they are and why they're currently in the top 25.
And I want to go back to what you talked about. It's alignment and personnel sets, personnel groupings. Like that is how you get defensive coordinators off balance. That's how you make weapons be weapons, is by putting different personnel groups out there in different alignments and making them a game plan for all of that. So, like you said, 𝗟𝗏 Robinson could be an eye back with Roschon Johnson being a fullback, similar to how Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson work together. But I think what Steve Sarkisian needs to understand or needs to rely on is trust his players, like he said himself. I need to trust him in the third and fourth quarter to run what I asked them to do in the first and second quarter. And then the second thing is find his 5 greatest athletes to get the ball to. And because like 104.9, the shows that I've been listening to on the Horn have talked about your offensive line's probably not going to get any better. Like that's why everybody's talking about transfer portal offensive linemen. Like you've got to work what you have on the front 5. But at the same time, you got to understand what they give you and then scheme around the offense to help them, solidify their positive traits and not, get to their negative stuff. So that's kind of where we're at this point.
Yeah. So Robert Muhammad up here, avoid 3 and outs and you get more plays, which leads to more touches. And I think, but again, you go back and look at it, Steve Sarkisian's idea is that every time they touch the ball, they're trying to score,
Yep.
But at the same time, you see them put together, 6, 7, 8, 9 yard or 9 play drives to be able to score a touchdown. But in Steve Sarkisian's idea is that every time he calls a play, he wants it to be an explosive. He wants it to be an explosive play, and I think that's going to hurt you when it comes to. It's either you want an offensive coordinator that's going to drive the ball and keep. Obviously, when you're talking about, let's go back. I think it was it Oklahoma State? I think they had 80 plays to our 60 plays. I think you're going to run into situations like that with a play caller like Coach Sarkisian. Is because I don't think he's going to be a grinded out kind of coach until it comes to the fourth quarter and he can rely on Bijan. But the problem is you can't rely on your line to be able to grind games out, especially against good or great defensive lines.
I mean, when you score, like, here's the thing. Like, you lost to Arkansas and you scored 21 points. You lost to Oklahoma State and you allowed them to score a touchdown, to get the football back. And you lost by 8 points. But you scored 48 against Oklahoma. Like, you've scored enough points to beat every football team, maybe minus Arkansas and Oklahoma State. So, to me, like, me and you are bred defense. Like, we love defense. Like, we love to stop more than we love to score. But in my mind, like, you can never think about what's going to happen on the other side of the football. If you could, like, when you were up 38-20 to Oklahoma at half, like, you got to accept that, and you want that. You want those explosive plays, like you save your worthy stiff-armed Oklahoma guy down at the ground on the first, play from scrimmage. Like, you have to have those things to create momentum. But the problem is, when we get to the second half, we have big leads against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. We haven't found a way to get it to the finish line. So, consistent complementary football for 4 quarters is what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. We'll move on to defense, man. I just want to. I think defense again. This is who me and you are. We're defensive guys. So if I could see a 10-3 game, I'd honestly, I love. And I've actually went back and watched my Georgia. I don't know if I've seen a defense play like that in college football in probably as long as I can remember. Because if you go back and look at the teams that have been successful, that have won national championships, they're able to put up points. You've had those Alabama teams that have kind of limited the number of points that they've given up to be able to win those national championship games. You've seen explosive offenses be able to go to, get into the college football playoff, but then they get to the college football playoff and they get outscored because their defense is not good. So I can tell you, man, that Georgia defense is something that I think every defensive coordinator wants their team to be like moving forward. Let's talk about 3-down linemen, single high safety versus 2 high safety and 3-down linemen. Your thoughts on that, man? And you think 𝗟𝗞𝗘 is going to make, steady adjustments going to a 4-down lineman, seeing that it's not so much the pass efficiency stuff, but it's really the yards you're giving up per rush, and how many yards you're giving up per game to bring a 4-down lineman or 4-down lineman.
And that's essentially what Jeff is saying here. Explosive offense and a bend don't break defense allows you to wear out the defense. Like you said, run after run. Their defense is on the field. They're grinding them out, and the second half happens. And you no longer have those explosive plays because they've found a way to stop that. But you haven't found a way to get off the football field for the first half. Now your guys have been grinding out. But it goes back to when you talk about 𝗟𝗞𝗘, he's got to figure out what this defense is best at. And is it versus alignment? You're talking about 4-down lineman, 3-down lineman. I'm talking about rush defense versus pass defense. Like this defense last year was the number 1 rush defense in the conference, if I'm not mistaken, but definitely in the top 2 or 3. And so that was what we relied on. We could stop the run. We got to figure out how to fix it in the back 7. Like what are our linebackers going to do? What are our safeties going to do? What are our corners going to do as far as cover receivers? Because we weren't very good at that last year. I think we were 106.
108. I think 106, 108.
In our preseason preview.
Way up there.
We got to figure out how to cover people, right? And so at this point, I don't know. Like, I feel like we haven't been able to stop the run, but we've been able to, stop the pass, with some kind of clogging cover, 3-man front, 3-3-5 or 3-4, with the back end, safety over the top of whoever the strongest guy is. But at some point, you got to get pressure on the passer, man. Like and be able to stop them and that's why I thought a big defensive line with Sweat, Coburn, Ojomo, and Collins was probably the answer, because you got girth up front, stop the run, and then figure out what you're going to do on the back end, and then use Overshown occasionally as a spy. Like Jalen Ford has come to the forefront. We'll see what he has tomorrow. But basically, you got 6 in the box and 5 in the back. But I think now we're going with 7 in the box and 4 in the back, and just they got to figure out a way to cover guys.
And I don't mean this just the despair. I don't want to obviously hype up somebody's injury, but do you think Jacoby Jones' injury?
Absolutely, he's the best passer.
Almost. I was actually going to go opposite of that. Do you think Jacoby Jones' injury was almost a blessing in disguise, allowed Alfred Collins to be able to play more snaps moving forward, seeing that he's been your best, defensive lineman?
Yeah, because he was pretty much what we felt like after last year was an interior lineman. Like he's going to play a 1 or a 3. I never saw him playing the jack linebacker or the jack end. And like you said, when Jacoby came out, it allowed Alfred Collins to then show us. But that's 𝗟𝗞𝗘's defense. Like we've always talked about, he has big guys across the front. Whether they're the 1 and 3, the jack or the defensive end, they're always big and they're versatile. You'll see him move inside, move outside. Like that's always been his game plan. So to see him move out there, was it a surprise? No. To see his production out there, as early as he's learning the position, he's 302 pounds. He's 6'5", 302 pounds playing the rush end. Is it surprising? Not to me, because we know what kind of athlete he is. But I think we're going to continue to see more production out of him. But like I said, you got to get pass rush. You've got to get pass rush. Yeah,
and in limited snaps, and if you go back to, I think, Pro Football Focus, you look at it is numbers, Alfred Collins' numbers. I think based on snaps that he has, I think he's had the most pressure on the quarterback than any other player that we have. So I think moving forward, if you go 4-down lineman, to me, it's probably going to be what a ಗೋಫು at the end, a ಗೋಫu, or one of those guys playing, playing that obviously end, and then having Alfred Collins on the other end, and then bringing 2 big guys in to stuff the run.
But we've always talked about how important the interior pass rush is. like a Jomo and Coburn and Tavondre and those guys pushing that pocket, because quarterbacks expect to see pressure from the outside, or able to roll left or roll right and run, able to, maneuver the pocket and run. Caleb Williams did this countless times against us in the Oklahoma game. He felt pressure on the backside. I think it was from Jacoby or whoever replaced him, and he would roll out to the right and throw a 50-50 ball up to Marvin Mims, and it would be complete. What we need to do is create pressure from the inside, because the pocket doesn't go back. You know what I mean? So if you can contain on the outside and push pressure from the inside, then it's a different ball game, because they don't have the ability to escape. And that's what Texas needs more than anything, is the ability to tackle in open space and the ability to get a rush from the interior guys, the 1 and the 3, meaning Tavondre, Coburn. And once they get that, whether it be with those two guys or Byron Murphy behind them, or they need to solidify that 1 and 3 technique rush up the middle, because I really feel like the ends, talking about Alfred Collins and whoever it is over on the other side, whether it be Thornton or a Gofu, have the ability to push the edge and basically make the quarterback step up into a sack. And that's what's the most important.
And you talked about Jaylan Ford earlier, and I think Jaylan Ford brings some athleticism that we haven't seen when you're in DeMarvin and Overshown and Jaylan Ford on the field together. You're talking about guys who can move sideline to sideline, but also can bring that pressure from that linebacker position as well, with the speed that they have. And I think that to me, if I was to look at the defense today, and I say, hey, I'm PK, and this is just Clint, I'm PK, I'm probably going to put all my eggs in the front seven and rely on my 4 secondary guys to have to make plays in space moving forward.
And that's the only thing I have about the secondary guys. Like, I'm comfortable with Deshaun Jameson. I'm comfortable with Anthony Cook. I'm comfortable with Jaron Thompson. BJ Foster in coverage, I haven't been comfortable with since he got here. It's just, or are we going to move Josh Thompson back to safety for his coverage skills, the ability to tackle, in that boundary where guys are eating our ass up with wide zone. Like, there's a reason why they're talking about moving him back to safety, and that's his ability to tackle in open space. So I agree with you on the coverage skills. Like, you have to be able to get pressure on the passer. And I kind of liken it to the catcher, the shortstop, second baseman, the center fielder. Like, you want your best defensive guys in baseball to be up the middle. You got to have that in football too to be successful. Like, an edge rusher is special need, right? A lockdown corner is a special need. Like, those guys are like diamonds in the rough, right? That's what
they are. Yeah,
that edge rusher.
Yeah.
But where you need to be most solid is that 1, that 3, that middle, and that safety. That strong safety. Like, those guys have to be solid, because they're calling out the calls from the periphery. And they have to understand the game plan, number 1, and they can't miss assignments. And that's what we've done consistently. That's why Kennedy Brooks scored at the I know Oklahoma held on probably 3 different occasions on that. But that's that middle, that 1, that 3, that middle, and that strong safety, or that free safety sitting back there, have to be solidified, and they have to understand their assignments, because it all pushes outside.
So, but I think
getting on the soapbox.
No. But I think it's important, because I think what you'll see now, again, we banged our heads on the wall, boom, 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 over the last 3 years, because coaches didn't want to make decisions. They didn't want to take a guy off the field just because. That makes sense. I felt like we've dealt with that, But I think what's important now is this coaching staff. Again, they've been with this team for 1 year. They've had an opportunity over the last couple of weeks. They've actually had an opportunity to watch their team play 5 games, right? No, 7 games, right? 7 games in. 7 games in, and then all of a sudden you get a 2-week bye, so you have 7 games on film to see where your guys are probably the best fit in this defense. I think it's really making the adjustments based on what you've seen over the last 7 games to make those adjustments. And if those adjustments, what you read on Horns 247, I think at the beginning of the week or the end of last week, I think Josh Thompson is that move. Josh Thompson is that move to safety. 1, he has good open field tackling ability. That's 1. 2, he can cover. Obviously, he's a cornerback. He can cover. He could probably cover a lot more space than probably what you're going to get. What I'm thinking is probably what you're going to get from either one of Schooler or
BJ.
And I think BJ really is probably going to be alongside Josh Thompson, but he's going to be able to play really that strong safety box spot. And you have really Darian Dunn, and you have Jameson on the outside. When you go back to a nickel, then you bring Cook in, who is probably my defensive MVP at this point of the year. It's probably Anthony Cook. To me, that's the way you see the defense.
No, I agree with you. And it sucks that it took 4 and 3 to get there in a bye week in the middle of the season to understand the strengths of your team. But guess what? That comes with a new coaching staff. Like, you have no idea. Like, the only guys that Steve Sarkisian and his staff have brought in are transfers from the transfer portal in the linebacker position mostly, and then Xavier Worthy. Like, none of these, I'll remind you again, none of these guys on this current roster belong to Steve Sarkisian and his roster, minus the transfers and Xavier Worthy. And Xavier Worthy, in my mind, has panned out pretty well. But it's one of those things, like you said, that until you get into real game time, you have no idea what you had. We thought we had a pretty solidified line after Kansas State and Colorado. We thought we were going to walk out there and grind the ball with Bijan Robinson and rush for 330 yards per game. That's not happening. We thought our defensive line was 8, 10, 12 deep. That's not happening. So now you understand 7 games in what you have, and now you have to start building on those strengths. Like I said, and sometimes counterbalancing against their weaknesses. Like I said, that front five, whoever they may be, is not a strong offensive line. So you got to figure out what this dude does well, this dude does well, and this dude does well. And you got to continue to grind it and do that over and over and over again until the defense decides to stop it. And then you got to switch to something else.
Yeah, I think, and not to go back to the offensive side of the ball, but I think from what I've seen, I think Kyle Flood and Sark have done a pretty good job of covering up some of the weaknesses on the offensive line. They tried to run inside zone. They realized they couldn't run inside zone. So what do? They start running outside zone. You know what I'm saying? But to me, the offense is I think it's worked. If you go back and you look at Oklahoma, and you go back and look at Oklahoma State, you go back and look at these games we played really well in the first and second quarter. It's really throwing the ball out to the outside. Wide receiver screen sets up the run, which really set up the play action.
You've scored enough points to win every game except Arkansas and Oklahoma State across the board. Like, you only scored 21 against Arkansas, so that may be a loss. You only scored I don't have the number in my head, but you allowed them to score a touchdown in order to get the ball back, and you lost by 8. But you were in the 20s, right? So, but every other game since then, or all season long, 38, 58, 70, 32 against Oklahoma. You lost and you put up 40, 48 points. Like, you scored enough points to win. It's just that ability to take it from 38-20 at half, like I told you. And we talked about post-game Oklahoma. Like, I thought we had the potential to get to 100 at some point during the second quarter. Like, that team was moving the football. And at some point, we went to that breaks. Like, I have a hard time not believing that those kids could perform in the second half as well as they did in the first half against Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Like, I feel like it's a little bit of breaks. Like yes, I know Alex Grinch is a good defensive coordinator. He probably made adjustments. I feel like the Oklahoma State, defensive coordinator made adjustments, but probably not. If we get out of our own way, probably not good enough to beat us.
That brings up a question. To me, is it a mindset thing, though, with these players? And again, we go back and talk about, these guys. Some of these guys on this football team have dealt with multiple position coaches, multiple head coaches, multiple coordinators. I had an opportunity to be on a podcast, and I think probably everybody here probably had an opportunity, if not watched it. I think, was it on Sunday night? Sunday night. It was Nino's Corner hosted it. Fanatic Perspective, myself, Steve from Fanatic Perspective, Texas Platinum, Lando, Texas Homer. And one of the things was Nino, being an Air Force guy, a commander in the Air Force, and me being, a senior enlisted guy from the Army, went and talked about how leadership change and culture plays a part in the mindset of people. And we see it because every 2 to 3 years, if you're lucky, you have a difference or a change of command who has a different mindset on how they want to do things moving forward. And I think I think that plays a big role in, again, you're dealing with 18 to 22 or 18 to 23-year-old, student athletes that have to be able to change based on what that leader is telling them to do.
And as well as I do, we have things out there called command climate surveys. Like within 90 days of command, you get a climate survey that says, hey, Lockby's my commander and he's not very good at this and he addresses this. And it's one of those things but I felt like there was a whole lot of energy. And I kind of felt the same way, unfortunately, about Tom Herman. Like I really felt like after the Sugar Bowl, we were headed in the right direction with Tom Herman. And it just went downhill. And that's what we can't do with this coaching staff is catastrophize it. What we need to understand is that Kyle Flood's a great offensive line coach. And Steve Sarkisian is probably the best play caller in college football. That Pete Kwiatkowski has led probably a Washington team with lesser talent to, the top 5 defense in the country. What we do, and understand that they're not their athletes. They haven't recruited any of these guys. They've only brought in transfers, plus Xavier Worthy, and give them a little bit of time. But I say that to say this, that they're starting to understand their talent, and I want them to continue to, solidify that. Like, hey, how can I make Keelan Robinson the best football player that he is? Is he a slot receiver? Is he a tailback? Is he a guy that runs jet sweeps? Same thing with Troy, with Troy O'Meara when he gets back. Praying for that kid. How can I best weaponize him? The guys that are coming in the 21 class, how can I make them a better football player? How's Armani Winfield going to be great? How is Jaden Blue going to be great? How do I solidify Malik Murphy's skills? That's what they're going to be judged by. I don't think any true Texas fan is judging this coaching staff off the first 7 games of the season. Does it suck for 4-3? Yes. I think we were going to beat Arkansas. Absolutely. I think we were going to beat Oklahoma State. Absolutely. I thought we'd be 6-1 at this point. Like we've done our prediction shows. But what we have to understand is that we are 4-3, and how do we get better, against Baylor, who's the number 16 team in the country? Like you said, at this point, there's no walkovers. You're going to have to go to Iowa State still. You're going to have to go to Kansas State still. Like there's still teams on this schedule. I'm sorry, Kansas State. Yep, it's a home game, but you still got good football teams out there that you have to find a way to beat.
I never want to talk about losses, man, but I think for me, the hardest thing to do is to be able to see a change or improvement through a loss. That makes sense because you never want to do those things. But I think you're almost at a pivotal point in the season now with having to go to Baylor, then having to play Iowa State and Ames, that is taking a loss at this particular point going to have people catastrophizing about your record versus the improvement in the adjustments that the coaching staffs are moving forward.
And I threw this comment up about working, man, because Clint's talked about it before. I know Steven's talked about it before on Fanatic Perspective about being ranked and how gross I think it is that Texas can't play good football when they're ranked. That Texas has pressure when they're not number 1, not number 5, not number 10, but number 18 team in the country. And folks want to say they can't have the pressure of being ranked. Like, that's not a thing for me. Like, 4-3, the pressure is off, so you're going to run the table. You're going to win 5 games in a row. You'll be 9-3. You're going to go to maybe a New Year's Six Bowl, maybe a late December game. But you haven't gained ground on Oklahoma. You're not prepared for the SEC. You're not able to tell recruits that you won a Big 12 championship. Like, that's, to me, what it matters. So 4-3, the pressure's off. The pressure needs to be on this program week in, week out. And that's when you're going to know that Rod kind of talked about this today. Like, you want to be that 10-win season that's an underachievement. You want to be picked on because you're going to the Alamo Bowl. You're going to the Holiday Bowl. You're not in the Rose Bowl, Cotton Bowl, Sugar Bowl, and all those, New Year's Six games. Like, that's where you want to be. So pressure to me is nothing. Go out and perform, man. Go out week to week and get better. Like you said, like this year, did I think they were going to go 10-2? I felt like their only losses were going to be to Iowa State and Oklahoma. Absolutely, I did. That was my August prediction, and I'm going to stand by it. I felt they were better than Oklahoma State. I felt they were better than Arkansas. But guess what? They got beat. But what's most important is, like you said, that they take those lessons and get better against Baylor. They get better against Iowa State. They get better against Kansas. They get better against West Virginia and Kansas State. Drive to drive, quarter to quarter, half to half, and game to game. That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do to get this team back on the map. Like, you can't – it has to be micro. It can't be macro. Like, Texas can't roll their football helmet on the 50-yard line against these teams and expect to win. Like, you have to beat your guy on every play, whether it be pass rush or blocking, or whether it be route running or coverage. Like, you have to beat your guy each and every play in order to get the 21 class in here, the 22 class in here, the 23 class in here, to get this program better.
Yeah, I like this show tonight, man, because it's let us – actually, I don't want to call it a break from what we've done, but I think it's given us an opportunity to kind of sit back and really think about where we are, where we think we are as a team, and how we need to move forward. And I think what we're talking about tonight is a little different than going into talking about Baylor and
pregame show,
and being successful against Baylor, because I think we have to be successful for us. And I think coach's staff says that, it's coach speak, right? Is that you shouldn't worry about the team that you're playing. You need to play at a level or that standard that each and every week. And I think I feel like that we're going in the right direction like that. I don't feel like that, he's going to let them take a week off, or he's not going to let an opponent, just because, let's look at Rice or Texas Tech or someone that you were supposed to beat. I don't think he's ever going to let the foot off the gas. I think there's a certain standard that he's putting in place, and that these guys are going to go out there and play at that standard each week. And I don't think we've seen that. I think the problem we're having now is that we cannot finish football games. We start football games really, really well. That shows that you showed up for the football game. That was probably what we had before, is it felt like in some games we felt like we didn't show up at all on teams that we should have had big leads on. At least we show up now. I think too. How the hell do you finish? How is getting that mindset that it's time to finish? And I know that they have been talking that middle piece over the last. I know Sark was like, a lot of things they did over the bye week was a lot of mental preparation, because they know that they can do it. They know they can run the plays. And it's going back to understanding that you can run the play regardless if it's in the first quarter or the third quarter. It's the same play. What's the difference? You're still blocking the guy that's in front of you. You're still running the same route.
And that's where I thought we turned the corner. Like, you scored 70 points against a conference opponent in Texas Tech, right? You scored 70. You beat them by 35 points. And then you went on the road against TCU, the team that's, handled you for the last 11 years. You're 2-9 against them. And you beat them on the road in TCU. And that's what I'm saying. And you started out 38-20 against Oklahoma. I really thought we were there, So the last, I would say, 4 out of the last 6 quarters that we played football, the second half against Oklahoma, the second half against Oklahoma State, we played well in the first half against Oklahoma State. 4 out of the last 6 quarters have defined our season. Now let's get it right. And I'm gonna talk about working man's comment here. The 22 class is here, LOL. Let me tell you something, man. The number 2 ranking in the nation by some standards. Let me tell you, if we run the table, we're 9-3, you got a chance to solidify that class. If you don't do that against these football teams, you roll your helmet out there and you finish 6-7 or 7-6, you're not going to have that 22 class that's currently, committed to your school but not signed to your school.
Absolutely, no doubt. Because if you go back and look,
dude.
Yeah, if you go back and look at it, you're competing against Oklahoma, who is obviously undefeated and number 3 in the nation. That's a problem. That's a problem to recruit against, right? The second one is probably the bigger problem is that team out east that's already in the SEC that came off a loss, probably a bad loss to a Mississippi State, and then turned around and beat Alabama the following week, and then had 2, I'm not going to call them cupcakes, but they played Missouri and then turned around and played South Carolina, who couldn't get out of their own way. So they were able to pick up that piece. They went Alabama, win versus after getting a loss to Mississippi State. And what happens? You get all these recruits that are all up on, hey, the hype is there, man. And if the hype is there, these guys start talking to each other, and then all of a sudden your guys start looking around. Don't think Armani Whitfield's not looking at Michigan State. Don't think that a guy in Denver Harris that we definitely need as a lockdown corner is not looking at probably LSU, probably not right now because of the situation they got going on there. But you're still competing against teams like Alabama. People were talking about, Perkins earlier, right? you have to be able to show that you're proven. One, you got to be able to show that you can win on the field. Two, to get these guys to want to feed into the momentum moving into signing day or national signing day, one or two. So,
because again, I want to know what working man knows that we don't know, because these kids know what's going on. I'm not so sure about that, man. Like, these kids will go to a place where they think they can get early playing time, where they can win football games and get pushed to the NFL. We talked about this till we're blue in the face. If you finish this season 7-6 or 6-7, those guys are not going to appreciate that, and they're going to look other places. That's real, because we really haven't taken advantage of the NIL at this point. We haven't really marketed our players at this point.
Yeah, he's got a lot of comments here recruiting. But I definitely agree with development. Do I think this is a developmental staff? Absolutely. But you got to get them on the 40 acres before you have an opportunity to develop. And if I'm Jimbo Fisher, or if I'm Lincoln Riley, or if I'm Nick Saban, he could just tell you, hey, sign here, and they're probably going to sign. But we have to be able to get them there before we're able to develop these guys. I'm going to tell you, I wouldn't so much worry. Recruiting is a big piece, but I think what's even bigger this year is going to be what happens in the transfer portal after the season is over. Because, there's guys that are in the transfer portal now. You got a guy that was at Oregon. It sounds like he's going to sign with BYU, but there's a damn near 4-star or high 5-star offensive tackle that just is leaving Oregon. It's leaving Oregon a program that's winning, because he wants to get closer to home. He's from Utah, and it sounds like he's going to sign with BYU because of those home things. And I think Texas probably has talent out there too, that in other programs. How do we really manifest the transfer portal at the end of the season? I think is probably bigger than, the 21 class that we currently have, because these guys are still going to have to come in, get developed. Yeah, there's a couple of guys that probably walk in day one on the defensive side of the ball. If you sign them tomorrow, be able to play when they get here. But you're talking about offensive line talent right now. It's difficult for guys just to walk in that haven't been in a college program or a college strength and conditioning program to be able to start day one. So I think that's where you're going to see a big push is in the transfer portal as well. So,
when we talk development, I think of guys like Albert Collins, Vernon Broughton, Byron Murphy, DJ Harris, Terrence Cooks, Jalen Ford, like guys who are on the second team who are underclassmen. Like, develop your guys that are already on your current roster, figure out what they have, figure out what their strengths are, kind of what we were talking about earlier. Like, figure out what your roster is really, really good at, and then go in that transfer portal and solidify it. Go in that recruiting class and solidify it. Like, make your 85 best dudes your 85 best dudes. Like, how is Kyle Flood going to continue to develop Jalen Garth, Hayden Connor, Logan Parr, these young underclassmen, Jake Majors, Max Merrill, these guys. How is he going to make them better over the next, calendar year for the 23 season? But not looking too far ahead. Just want to play Baylor tomorrow, have a good showing, get back on the winning track, push this thing to 9-3 and see what happens in the winter.
Yeah, because again, with what's going on in the Big 12, it's wide open at this point. You finish out the season strong and you go out there and you're able to win the next 5 games, you probably put yourself in a position where you play Kansas State at the end of the year that you may be playing for that second spot in the Big 12 championship. So
just keep winning. Don't worry about yourself, man.
Yeah. So, and basketball is around the corner. Basketball's around the corner. That should bring some excitement. I know me and Jeremy are excited, so we'll probably, do some basketball content as well. We got some guys that they come to the show specifically to talk basketball all the time. Hell, we may have them on the show as well. I know Nick Harris is one of the recruiters there. He's the one of the writers there at 247 that's pretty clued into the basketball program as well. Just C13, man, he's all about that basketball. So we're gonna have to talk a little basketball here shortly. But hey, let's talk a little bit about this Baylor game. Like I said, I've watched a lot of football over the last 7 weeks, and they are probably the game that, believe it or not, that I may, at the end of the show, I may pick Baylor to win based on the fact that they're really, really good. They play really good offense of ball, and they play really good on the defense side of the ball as well, man. So, how pivotal is this game against Baylor, man, tomorrow?
It's 4-4 is if you get to 4-4, it's not good, man. Like if you get to 4-4, we saw what happened against Oklahoma. We saw what happened against Oklahoma State. Like I really want the fan base to appreciate the coaching staff we have, give them a chance. But if you go to 4-4, and then you got to go to Iowa State, which could be 4-5, like we have to win this football game tomorrow. Like to me, it's the most pivotal game on our schedule at this point. Like every game is the most important game. Coach speak, I get it. But if you go to 4-4 and have to go to Ames, then a lot of talk is going to be, with 3 losses in a row, like he's talking about. When you're going on the road against Iowa State, it was a team that's projected to be better than you. How much pressure is that going to put on the kids? You have to win this football game. You have to.
Yeah, and you start talking about pressure again. I think there's a lot of pressure. I think there's a lot of pressure in those locker rooms. I think there's a lot of pressure in those coaches' offices at this particular point because, again, you're looking at being 500, the way that the Texas fan base is, and then having to travel to Ames to play Iowa State the week after and potentially go under 500. Not good, man. It's a problem, man. So obviously, when you're looking at Baylor's offense, you're talking about a quarterback in Bohannon, man, that is a efficient quarterback. You're talking about currently sitting at 1,563 passing yards, 66% completion rate, about at 9 yards per completion. Hell, that's almost a first down. But throws touchdowns without interceptions, man. Currently sitting at 12 touchdowns. 1 interception, has taken 5 sacks through the year so far, man. And then you got a guy, running back Smith, that's currently had 105 attempts, 785 yards, but carried at 7.5 yards per carry. That's what I'm talking about. It's consistent. You know what I'm saying? A guy that can throw the ball, very efficient throwing the football. But you also have a running back that's running for 7.5 yards per game. And this is what scares me the most. And we go back to talking defense. What are you going to try to stop? You're going to try to stop the run and make Bohannon pass as efficient as what he's been? Or are you going to try to stop the pass and not get beat over the top and let them run the ball tomorrow?
To me, like you said, when we started this podcast, it was going to be more a reflection. Like we didn't get an opportunity because I was in the field to do a midseason review. To me, if we show up and play our best football game, I believe we're going to be able to stop the run. I got to feel like at a certain point, we got to be able to stop the run. And then I just don't know that Bohannon can beat us over the top. He has the ability he has the arm strength to be able to beat us in certain points, but you got to stop the run. Bijan has to run the ball consistently, and we have to stop the run. That's what football is based around because everything is based upon the run game. Play action pass, RPOs, all that stuff is based upon the run game. So the most important facet for me, for the defense, is for 𝗟𝗓𝗏 Coburn, T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, and those guys in the interior line to knock the dude down with less than 4 yards per carry. Like we can't have big busts. We can't have big plays, of over 25 yards in the run game because that's where we've gotten beat is explosives. Consistently, I feel like we stopped the run, especially in the first half pretty consistently. We get beat with explosives, and our guys get tired because, again, that quick strike offense versus holding the ball type deal, like it's a calamity. Like you gotta manage the game. You got to figure out how to manage the game.
If you look at it from the offensive side of the ball, the Texas and Baylor probably minus scoring is about as close as it gets. 6.7 yards per play, both of them. Points per play, we're currently at about 0.6. They're at about 0.5. Rushing plays, we're running it about 60% of the time. They're running about 40% of the time. They're running it about 60% of the time. Running it about 40% of the time. Completion percentages, ours is 0.03, or actually theirs is 0.3 or 0.5 higher than ours, 64.7 to 64.2. But the third down conversion is about 12% less than what Texas has. So I think if we get them in third down situations, it looks like they're only getting the third down is probably 1 out of every 3 tries they're getting the third down. And I think that's where it starts at and ends at. Yeah. And then red zone scoring, they're currently at about 90.91. And obviously we have one of the highest in the country at 91.8. So both offenses are going to try to run the ball tomorrow and then probably more than likely play action to try to get the deep ball. It's what it looks like. If you're looking at both Bohannon's numbers and the way that their offense currently looks. Going through the defense side here, they're only allowing 5.5 yards per play to our allowing 6.1, which is way too high. That's one of the biggest ones I've seen so far from the defense side of the ball. Is that how the hell are we giving up six yards per play? And then they're only giving up about 60% on completion percentage, but they are letting people score in the red zone, currently at about 90%. So, and Jeremy got up and left there for a minute. Probably had to take care of something there. His dog, believe it or not, his dog's gonna have to have surgery, I think, on an ACL on a hip, so he may have to go check on him there. So, kind of want to go through the comments here while Jeremy is gone. Isaiah, we talked about this a little bit. Take Luke snap and share them with Ford, and we will stop the run. It looks like, again, looking at the depth chart, I don't know. It looks like it's the same depth chart that's been coming out week after week after week after week on the defensive side of the ball and on the upside of the ball, minus the injuries. It looks like Jalen Ford, and again, if you go back and look at him, versus, Oklahoma, and then go look at him at Oklahoma State, he has played really, really well. He's fast. He's very athletic, and he does not mind coming downhill. And he's very, very good at being in the open field and tackling. So I think you'll see Jalen Ford take some of Luke's snaps moving forward, not just in this game, but I think moving forward through the season. I think him and 𝗣𝗏𝗓 𝗏𝗏𝗓 will make a great tandem at that linebacker position.
And that's names you've talked about: Jalen Ford, Jaden Hullaby, Marcus Tillman, all these underclassmen that make up that mid-tier linebacking core. Have to come in and they have to make plays. They're more, like you said, he's probably more athletic than Luke Rockmeyer. So you got to see that going forward.
Yeah. 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗧, Murphy, and Collins might be the best 3, especially later in the game. Those are probably your most athletic defensive linemen. From an athletic standpoint, to get off, be able to move guys, but also be able to quick twitch guys. I definitely, 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, Murphy, and Collins are definitely your most athletic defensive linemen. Murphy, we're very, very high on Murphy. He graduated from our alma mater there at DeSoto High School. Have been really high on him. We've talked about him ad nauseum. If he had a couple of more inches coming out of his class, he probably would have been ranked a high, really, really high 4-star, if not a 5-star. But I think size probably got the best of him in the recruiting cycle there. But definitely very, very high on 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 was my breakout player of the year before we started this year. And Collins, I think, with more time on the field, I think you'll see the pressure ratchet up on the defensive side of the ball with Collins there. I think Ogofu, and then I think having Jalen Ford there as well that can really move well in space will give 𝗣𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 probably some opportunities to have some pressure blitzes as well.
Yeah, something I'm really going to look forward to tomorrow is 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Collins snaps during the first half. Like a guy like Byron Murphy, who's a reserve, is going to probably have more fire in the fourth quarter because he's probably not going to play as many snaps in the first half. But pay careful attention to 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and Collins snaps. Like, get them off the football field. Like you said, get them to third down and nab them, get those 3 and outs that we've become accustomed to in the second half. Get them off the football field, get our defense a rest, and it doesn't matter how fast Steve Sarkisian scores as long as you're getting off the football field.
Plus or minus, I think this is important, man. Plus or minus 25 touches for Bijan tomorrow.
And that's the thing, man. Like we talked about the Oklahoma game where Bijan got touches, but Roschon and Keelan Robinson weren't a factor in the football game. I think that there comes a fine line between getting him rest and making him his most potent in the fourth quarter, kind of like when you're grinding down the game. if you can utilize those two dudes in the second and third quarter. So I think he gets to 25. I do. But I want it to be a more economical 25. Like, I would love to see him get 13 probably in the first 25 minutes of the ball game, meaning the first quarter, and 10 minutes into the second. Give me 13. Kind of give him a rest in that, final 5 minutes of the second half. Bring somebody else in there so he gets the final 5 minutes plus halftime. Bring him in that first, second, third drive of the third quarter, and then sit him those, To me, I'm going to pay attention to when he gets his snaps and when he is the most explosive, because I got to give him 13 snaps or 13 touches in the first 25 minutes. I'm going to give him almost like NBA basketball.
I was about to say that. It's like a basketball coach. It's like you coming out of a 30-second timeout, in basketball, but you're going to sit for a few minutes until a guy has to shoot free throws, and I'm going to bring you back in the game.
No time. It's 5 minutes. Yeah.
5 minutes. Yeah. Yeah, I was like, basketball. It was funny because my mind's going towards Texas basketball as well. So it's funny you were talking about that, because in my mind, I'm like, damn, he's it's like a basketball coach. Hey, boop, all right, TV timeout. I'm going to sit you. All right, we're going to rest you. We're going to rest you until the next whistle goes off, and then I'm gonna bring you back in.
You get a 16, a 12, an 8, and a 4, and so if you get a whistle at 16:35, you take your guy off the court. You get that 35 seconds of game time, which may be 2 minutes plus the 2-minute timeout. Like, I'm going to be very closely watching when he gets his carries, because I think it matters. I think it matters that he's fresh in the start, and then you rest him somewhere. And Cowboys do this really, really well. Kellen Moore does this really, really well with Zeke Elliott and Pollard. Watch the times that Pollard comes in the game to spell Zeke. It's when Zeke has been grinding for 2 drives, gets off the field, and then allows Tony Pollard with his, because they're 2 different running backs, almost like, Roschon and Bijan. Bijan's the explosive, and then you got to deal with Roschon, who's, Roschon's more like Zeke, and Bijan's more like Pollard, where he's explosive. But you have to deal with 2 different guys at their optimal potential and their optimal rest level and ability. So, yes, he will get to 25. It's a long answer, but I'm looking to more where he gets these carries and where he gets these touches.
All right, so 2 things I'm going to look for tomorrow in Baylor, and I'm going to pay close attention to, is this right here, working man. I want to see guys in motion every single play. I think that's important. We have to do that. If you're doing it in the first quarter, or you're doing it in the first half and it's working, continue to do the same thing in the second half. You know what I'm saying? Again, there's nothing wrong with having motion. There's nothing wrong with running the same plays from a different look.
Personnel set.
Yeah, from a different personnel setting. And I think that's what we need to see tomorrow. Hell, if outside zones running or working, put a different personnel package in there and continue to run outside zone. Yep. The second thing I want to see is I want to see what adjustments PK makes out of this bye week from not just a personnel standpoint, but from a scheme standpoint. I'm going to look at how many times on third down and short that we're in too high safety look versus bringing a guy down in the box. I want to see what that adjustment looks like, because I think he knows that's beating him now. You know what I'm saying? It sucks for him to figure it out now, but I think that's why you're seeing a lot of talk out of the 40 acres in seeing the changes, not from just a personal standpoint, but I think those personnel standpoint is going to change the way the scheme looks moving forward through the rest of the year. Because if you look at Baylor's the same as Iowa State. Iowa State is damn near the same as Kansas State. These guys are run-heavy offenses. They want to run the ball down your throat and then use an opportunity to play action pass to beat you over the top.
Absolutely, dude. Let me highlight Perry's comment real quick. Yeah, guys, like I said, we've been a little rusty. I just came out of the field, field operations for about 2 weeks, going back on Tuesday. A little bit tired. That's why you haven't seen us. Clint went on a show with all these other YouTube collaborators over the last Sunday to kind of pick up the slack for me. But you guys that would follow the channel for a while know I'm active in the military, and sometimes I get called to do certain things that don't allow us to continue to produce content. But we're back, and this next week will be my last field event until February, so we'll be good for the rest of the season. So really appreciate your patience, really appreciate your attendance, and just excited to get after Baylor tomorrow.
Appreciate it, Cody. Sometimes you just need a break. You guys deserve it. We appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's grind, man. It is a grind. It's a passion grind. It's a fun grind, but it is definitely a grind. Definitely a lot easier to get on here when your team's winning versus when your team is losing a couple of games. That's just the way it works. But I think, moving forward, I think we're good. There is one more time at the end of the year during November where I may be in Italy doing a pregame show and a postgame show. It's my 10-year anniversary. Me and my wife are taking off to Italy on Thanksgiving Day, and we'll be in Italy. And I think we're moving through Greece in that portion of the time. So, but I'll definitely, just like I had before, when on vacation, take the laptop, take a little small microphone, and we'll do work from there. But definitely excited. Let's do one single prediction, man. Score tomorrow, win. I'll let you go first, man, and I'll go second.
All right, 27-24 Texas.
All right, I froze. I apologize about that. Probably too many people using the Wi-Fi in my house right now. I'm going to go again. I'm starting to feel better about the adjustments we're making during the bye week. I'm going to go 34-31 Texas tomorrow. I think it is a pivotal game, and I think Texas shows up, and I think they show up for 4 quarters. I think Steve Sarkisian is probably going to show a little bit more window dressing tomorrow throughout the game. Obviously, he's got 𝗣𝗢𝗗𝗓, who's a tough defensive guy. And then I think Pete 𝗟𝗏𝗘 makes the necessary adjustments to get us through this Baylor game, and then we can move on to the next game after that. So we'll have our pregame chat on tomorrow, Jeremy.
Yeah, in-game chat. Yep.
In-game chat. In-game chat will start at 10 o'clock, and then me and Jeremy will see you tomorrow after
30 minutes.
About 30 minutes post whistle after the game to discuss what happened on the football field. I think we wrote our adjustments down that we want to see, and we'll probably talk in length about those things tomorrow after the game, win, lose, or draw. So, hey, we appreciate it. You know, Jeff Moe, he said he missed you guys. We missed you guys. We missed y'all too, man, and we're glad we're back, and hopefully you enjoyed tonight. You can find us on Facebook at Texas Football Talk, on Instagram at Texas Football Talk, and on Twitter at Texas Football Talk. And you can also follow us on our podcast over there at the Pigskin Podcast Network, at Texas Football Talk Podcast. You can find us on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, whatever podcast of choice you use. So we appreciate y'all, and we will please hit that like button. If you have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, and we will see you tomorrow. Welcome.